It's true.
And tonight on the Daily Wrap, sparks fly as chaos erupts during the GOP debate hosted by CNBC. God, I'm excited. We will have all the sordid details from that train wreck in Colorado last night. John Boehner plays the crying game again as he says goodbye as Speaker of the House. Paul Ryan, welcome to the jungle. And should a high school football coach have been fired or at least relieved of his duties for praying with his team before games? Well, we'll tell you all about that and more. This is the Daily Wrap live from New York City. And welcome to the show, everybody. I'm Joe Concha, joined by my co-host Rick Unger. Have you ever cried in public?
You know, yes. And I got to tell you, I actually got into a bit of a Twitter war today with Megyn Kelly.
Really?
Because she was kind of making fun of Boehner for crying during the session today in Congress. And I didn't like it. You know, yes, he cries a lot. But you know what? Today was a very big day in his life. He retired.
Athletes cry all the time when they retire.
He
Mike
retired. It's a huge thing, and I thought it was really insensitive for anybody to pick on him today, and that includes us because we kind of picked on him in that opening. Look, it's, you know, maybe it's because of my age, but I relate to that feeling of when your life's about to take such a dramatic change.
And Megyn acquiesced and apologized to you, I hope, and to the public.
She didn't. She defended herself.
She did.
But I had a lot of surprising support, actually, people who did see it my way. Look, you know, we don't have to be snarky and mean all the time. Sometimes it's okay, even if we don't agree with a politician, to say, hey, you did the best you could, and I hope you have a wonderful retirement. Enjoy the rest of your life.
Oh, God, pipe down. To Rick's right. No, that was very well said. She's an attorney and a senior fellow at the Independent Women's Forum. Gail Trotter is back to excel up from D.C. And finally, you see her here at least once a week. Welcome back, Naomi Kahn.
Thank you.
Tremendous color, by the way. We like about that. Yeah. Oh, by the way, she heads the Accountability Project. She'll let
that too. Sometime during the day.
Sometimes during the day. Right. Let's get right to the Daily Download.
My great concern is that we are on the verge, perhaps, of picking someone who cannot do this job. I've watched to see people say that we should dismantle Medicare and Medicaid and leave our senior citizens out in the cold. I've heard them talk about deporting 10 or 11 people here from this country out of this country, splitting families. I've heard about tax schemes that don't add up, that put our kids in a deeper hole than they are today. We need somebody who can lead.
And last night, the questions were flying fast and loose, including Donald Trump being asked if he was a comic candidate. Trump, the GOP frontrunner, and Ben Carson, hot on his heels in the polls, were hammered from all sides, including by Ohio Governor John Kasich.
My great concern is that we are on the verge, perhaps, of picking someone who cannot do this job. I've watched to see people say that we should dismantle Medicare and Medicaid and leave our senior citizens out in the cold. I've heard them talk about deporting 10 or 11 people here from this country out of this country, splitting families. I've heard about tax schemes that don't add up, that put our kids in a deeper hole than they are today. We need somebody who can lead.
Feisty. So Trump, as always, was quick to punch back.
John got lucky with a thing called fracking, okay? He hit oil. He got lucky with fracking. Believe me, that's why Ohio is doing well. And that's important for you to know. Number two, this is the man that was a managing general partner at Lehman Brothers when it went down the tubes and almost took every one of us with us, including Ben and myself. Because I was there and I watched what happened, and Lehman Brothers started it all. He was on the board and he was a managing general partner. Okay. And just thirdly, he was so nice. He was such a nice guy. And he said, oh, I'm never going to attack. But then his poll numbers tanked. That's why he's on the end. And he got nasty.
All right, Unger. That was one of the highlights or lowlights, depending on your perspective on the evening. Who won? Who lost? Who gained the most?
Well, who lost is easy. Clearly, CNBC was the biggest loser, but we'll get into that a little bit later. You know what? The truth is that debate will go down as history as not going down in history. It was really nothing. Nothing really came out of it. Nobody learned much. You got a little bit of background, but of course, we always have to have winners and losers. So if it's me, I would have to give it to Ted Cruz. and Marco Rubio, not because they showed us how brilliant their policy ideas are. Maybe they are, by the way. We just didn't get to hear it. But because they seem to do a better job of holding their own and saying things that might have hit home without being quite as snarky as some other ones. But it was a waste of time, quite frankly.
Gail? Rick and I are actually on the same page, which is a rarity. We both think that I had it as a tie between Cruz and Rubio. I found Cruz particularly impressive.
I'd agree in part and disagree in part. I think Rubio and Cruz took it to them, swept up everybody else. I thought they did an excellent job. But I think Cruz got his points across about his tax plan. And as a tax lawyer, who's someone who's written a lot and talked a lot about the death tax and how it doesn't really contribute to our economy and it's a bad policy idea, I was delighted to see that part of his tax plan is getting rid of the death tax.
But you know, let me just quickly say something to that. I'm not allergic, by the way, to the flat tax. And while they did get their top line,
because you write for Forbes.
Well, yeah, but Steve and I, actually agree on this problem. My problem is that we can pass a flat tax. We can get rid of the 75,000 pages in the IRS tax code.
Down to 3.
Which we'd all like, supposedly down to 3, according to Carly Theory. But you know what nobody can do? Guarantee me that the Congresses of the future will not create another 75,000 pages giving special interest, special treatment. Yeah. There's, flat tax, you can argue conceptually, is that good? Is progressive tax good? It doesn't matter if we pervert it by constantly changing it. And that none of them ever talk about that.
Well, that's why we have to have a constant battle. And the elected officials have to respond to what the constituents want, and they have not done it. The last major tax reform we had was in 1986, the Tax Reform Act. And everything we've had since then has accreted, added to our tax code. And now, we're at this...
And it'll just happen again with the flat tax.
But no, we pull it down to that, and we hold them to that. We hold their feet to the fire.
How?
Because if you could actually get that in the bill in the first place, then people are not going to allow these special interests to come in. And that is the fight
we never know
it,
though. We never know it. Every congressman who needs that money to run will give those people those favors. And you and I, who pay attention to this, we're not going to know it 80% of the time.
Well, we need to keep talking about it and writing about it.
Because nothing motivates voters more than talking about tax code. They might want their taxes low, but I'm telling you, the second you start talking about tax reform and getting into the details, people tune it out. And that's why I think that the majority of the conversation has been about performance and not about how every single person on stage yesterday has an economic plan that increases the deficit from $3 trillion under Jeb Bush all the way up to $12 trillion under Donald Trump. Every single one of them talks about lowering the deficit, but they're all going to add to the deficit.
No, that's not true.
No, it's absolutely true. I think that Marco Rubio had a great performance, but Kasich, I mean, as a Democrat, I really admire the fact that he was able to be sort of the Lindsey Graham of the professional debaters. He was the only one on stage who had real credibility.
A lot of Democrats like John Kasich, no question about it. Face him in a general election, though, you won't like him so much.
Exactly.
Governor Jeb Bush needing a big night with poll numbers plummeting and donors fleeing went after fellow Floridian Senator Marco Rubio on his voting record or lack thereof.
I'm a constituent of the senator, and I helped him, and I expected that he would do constituent service, which means that he shows up to work. He got endorsed by the Sun Sentinel because he was the most talented guy in the field. He's a gifted politician. But Marco, when you signed up for this was a 6-year term, and you should be showing up to work. I mean, literally, the Senate, what is it, like a French work week? You get like 3 days where you have to show up? You can campaign or just resign and let someone else take the job.
Okay, Mr. Rubio listened to Mr. Bush, kind of his mentor, so to speak, and had some words right back.
Over the last few weeks, I've listened to Jeb as you've walked around the country and said that you're modeling your campaign after John McCain, that you're going to launch a furious comeback the way he did by fighting hard in New Hampshire and places like that, carrying your own bag at the airport. You know how many votes John McCain missed when he was carrying out that furious comeback that you're now modeling it under?
He wasn't my
No, Jeb, I don't remember. Well, let me tell you, I don't remember you ever complaining about John McCain's vote record. The only reason why you're doing it now is because we're running for the same position, and someone has convinced you that attacking me is going to help you.
All right, who won that battle quickly, Rick?
Obviously, Rubio.
Rubio.
Quick response from Jeb Bush should have been, Mr. Rubio, I know Senator McCain, you're no John McCain.
Yep, it's a fight for donors, isn't it, Rick?
Yeah.
That was nothing more than that, like, who's going to give me the money?
Exactly.
Anyway, coming up next, CNBC under fire for its debate moderators. And who do you think won the debate? Go to newsmaxpolls.com, vote for your winner. More Daily Wrap in just a moment.
Let's be honest. Is this a comic book version of a presidential campaign?
It's not a comic book, and it's not a very nicely asked question the way you say that. Larry Kudlow is an example, who I have a lot of respect for, loves my tax plan.
I talked to economic advisors who have served presidents of both parties. They said that you have as much chance of cutting taxes that much without increasing the deficit as you would of flying away from that podium by flapping your arms really
Then you have to get rid of Larry Kudlow, who sits on your panel, who's a great guy, who came out the other day and said, I love Trump's tax plan.
Well,
John Harwood.
Go ahead, well, actually, who would you like to talk right now? Okay, if you've been paying attention today, then you know John Harwood is coming under fire for calling Trump a comic candidate. Ted Cruz also had a few issues with the moderators. Take a look at this.
The questions that have been asked so far in this debate illustrate why the American people don't trust the media. And you look at the questions. Donald Trump, are you a comic book villain? Ben Carson, can you do math? John Kasich, will you insult two people over here? Marco Rubio, why don't you resign? Jeb Bush, why have your numbers fallen? How about talking about the substantive issues people care about? The contrast with the Democratic debate, where every fawning question from the media was, which of you is more handsome and wise? That debate reflected a debate between the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks.
Well, except for that last sentence, I actually have to agree. That, of course, was Senator Ted Cruz last night, pointing out what most observers believe to be the obvious. And that is that the questions from CNBC moderators Becky Quick, John Harwood, and Carl Quintanilla were a bit ridiculous at best and downright rude at worst. Certainly they were, for the most part, not designed to shed light on the candidate's knowledge and respective philosophies of the economy, as was supposed to be the case. Indeed, so bad was the line of inquiry that even liberal Bill Maher thought the questions were dopey. Here's what he tweeted. Oh my God, did I just hear Ted Cruz say something awesome that I agree with? Yes. The media is even stupider than the polls. Who's on first? Got to agree with him, man. Joe, you're a media expert. What's your take? How did this happen last night?
Bad preparation for starters. I'll start with Becky Quick. She asked a question of Trump. Says, you say that Marco Rubio is Mark Zuckerberg's, the founder of Facebook's, favorite senator. And then Trump says, where'd you get that?
I didn't say that.
Yeah, I didn't say
Except that he did.
That's the thing, right?
And she didn't know where.
That's the thing. He then asked, what's your source, basically? And she said, well, I know I must have read that somewhere. It's very simple. In your notes that you've had weeks to prepare for. It's source, Trump website.
Unbelievable and unforgivable. What did you think, Gail?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, John is a partisan hack, and hackers are going to hack, as they say. So when you look at the performance that he put forward, that he could not even ask questions that were respectful and objective, you got to ask the hard questions, because whoever the Republicans choose as their candidate to go against Hillary has got to be someone who can stand up to hard questioning. But this stuff is just circus.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm going to disagree with you on John Harwood in terms of being a hack. I actually think he's better than that. However, it was not his place as a moderator to bring that kind of bias to the debate. I can't wait to hear what Nomi has to say about this.
I think that there's a stark difference between bias, and I talked about this earlier today on a different show. There's a difference between bias and there's a difference between unprofessional. I agree 100%. They came in and they were pundits. They were not journalists. Yeah. They were not moderators. They weren't like Anderson Cooper, who had his facts ready when people started to challenge him on the facts and quipped back.
When you're a pundit, aren't you therefore biased because you're offering an opinion instead of asking a question?
Possibly, but these are business pundits. They're not political pundits. They really didn't understand.
Well, that was crystal
politics.
Clear, wasn't it?
Very clear. Yeah, but in terms of bias, this is a network that in part is responsible for creating the Tea Party. So if the Republicans want to say that this was a liberal bias, I don't buy it. I just think that they were trying to get ratings. This is a great opportunity for them to get numbers, and it was sensationalized way before the debate
Which is why they'd rather try and start fights as opposed to actually talking about something. Let's bring in Tim Graham, who's the Director of Media Analysis with the Media Research Council, and get his viewpoint. Tim, welcome.
Thank you.
So I want to ask you what you thought of last night's debate. I got a pretty good idea what I'm going to hear, though.
Well, it was remarkably personal. I think when we looked through the transcript this morning and we tried to figure out how many of these questions sort of ended with a jab, it's about 2/3 of these questions ended with a "you're not plausible, you're a comic book candidate." These kinds of insults, frankly. I think that the questions could have been substantive if they'd finished where they started. You know, like they asked Cruz, you know, the House and the Senate passed a budget deal that the president will sign, and then, okay, that's factual. And then it's like, but you're obviously not the kind of leader people want. You know, I mean, that was not a question. It was an insult.
Hey,
and that's where they went wrong. They could have made that substantive. They could have said, why do you object to this? And you would have gotten off to a decent substantive start. It's not what they did. I mean, it seemed like they felt it was their job to insult them all, instead of just...
Tim, let me get Joe in on this because we don't have a lot of time. Go ahead,
Tim,
Joe.
we're about a minute until the break, but we're going to keep you through if that's okay with you. What I'm seeing now, Tim, is a cross between business and journalism, where these debates are very good business for these networks. Last night, CNBC was charging $250,000 for a 30-second spot. Fox had 24 million viewers. CNN had 23 million viewers for the last two GOP debates. All that said, CNBC had a record audience for them. They got about 14, 15 million viewers. So is it a sense of that you have to sensationalize this to make it more interesting for mainstream people watching?
And Tim, I'm going to ask you to hold your answer for the next segment because we're running out of time.
Give me time to think about it.
We want to keep you. We'll give you time to think about that, and we'll come back to you in a minute if that's okay. All right, so how would all of you rate the moderators of last night's debate? I know I want to know. I think all of us have expressed how we feel about it. You can let us know what you think by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. We're going to continue with more on last night's debate and with Tim after this. Stay with us.
Wait a second. We have $19 trillion in debt. We have people out of work. We have ISIS and Al-Qaeda attacking us. And we're talking about fantasy football? Can we stop? Stop. Seriously. How about this? How about we get the government to do what they're supposed to be doing? Secure our borders, protect our people, and support American values and American families. Enough on fantasy football. Let people play. Who cares?
He's so like me. He so plays like 9 leagues and just wants everybody to leave it alone. Anyway, that was Chris Christie going off on the moderators. As Rick said during the break, they could have smiled wrong at that point and they were going to be attacked, and rightly so, people would say. We bring back Tim Graham of the Media Research Council, still with us. So, Tim, let me re-ask my question, hopefully in a much more condensed version. Big ratings for these debates means big business, but... there is a journalism aspect to this where if you ask substantive questions that actually you have to talk about policy and taxes and numbers, might not resonate as well with mainstream people, just kind of casual folks tuning in. Do you think that the sensational part is overtaking the substance in an effort just to drum up the food fights and therefore the ratings?
Well, again, you can get a sensationalistic answer or fight on policy. These people have dramatic differences in some of these issues on policy. I don't buy that the kind of insults we heard last night were a good rating strategy. The people who tuned in to watch this debate did not tune into this debate to watch their favorite candidate be kicked in the butt. That's not what they tuned in for.
Tim, how much would you...
I don't think you can say there was a business reason to be the way they were. I think to the audience it became much more obvious that these were questions asked because the moderators were not Republicans and they're interested in making these candidates look bad. I think that's the way most viewers saw this debate.
I'll buy that with John Harwood, certainly, no question about that. But I'm just wondering in terms of... Well, Rick, why don't you take the next question? I know you wanted to.
All right. Well, I'm just curious what you think about this, Tim. I actually said at the beginning of the show, I think last night was a write-off. Nobody learned much of anything. But there is one thing that I think could come of it that would be good. The moderators, I think all agree, went so far over the line that maybe this will set the stage for moderators in future debates on both sides to be a little more careful, a little more studious, and a little more substantive in their questions. You think there's any hope of that?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it, again, is they just need to withdraw a little bit. You know, Brent Bozell, when we were watching the debates in 2012, he liked Jim Lehrer and he liked Bob Schieffer because on some level they knew the debate was not about them. And that's where Harwood and these people fail. is they get in there and they fight and they spar and they yell and they think that they're the stars of the show. And what they're supposed to be doing is facilitating a discussion that's not about them. And that's what they're failing to do. And you can do substance, and you can serve the people well, and you might even make an entertaining program without being a jerk.
Hey, Tim, how much does this fall to Reince Priebus as far as vetting a guy like Harwood? Should never been near a moderator table. We knew what he was going in terms of leaning left. And just in general vetting, how much of this does this fall to Priebus?
I think he was probably thinking this is the most conservative channel that Comcast has.
Right.
That's not much of a measurement. You could have had a CNBC debate and said, we're going to let Larry Kudlow moderate it, and you would have had something closer to sort of what I think Priebus thought he was going to get. Yes, well, you don't make Harwood the main moderator if you want it to be a moderate show.
But he was only one of the moderators, and wouldn't you guys all agree that there's nothing wrong with having somebody who leans left as one of the moderators, as long as they're reasonable and, by the way, respectful.
And a counterbalance, though.
Yeah.
But no, you need a counterbalance as well.
Well, yeah, but presuming one of the other two would have been.
Right.
I don't know if they were or not.
No, I think they're pretty much down the middle. Go ahead, Tim. We got about 10 seconds.
The real CNBC watchers in my office thought that Quintanilla and Becky Quick were more biased and sensationalistic than usual.
Interesting.
That's interesting indeed. Well, our thanks to Tim Graham, Media Research Council, for joining us tonight. Thanks again, Tim. Okay, very good. Last word, Gail Trotter. Do you think a solution is that we should start putting reporters, newspaper reporters, and not pundits in these positions?
I think so. I think that the pundits have their own agenda that they start with, and it's a real problem, and this should be eliminated, and Reince Priebus holds responsibility.
Those guys were reporters.
Yeah. All of them have
their
been
pundits.
They're
pundits,
TV personalities, right? More than anything else. I'm talking about hard news TV reporters. Anyway, how would you like to be featured on Newsmax TV? Go to newsmaxtv.com/talkback and record a 60-second video message that can be used on the air. More Daily Wrap in a moment.
And welcome back to the Daily Wrap. It's not unusual to see a football team huddling together in prayer both before and after a football game. However, as assistant football coach Joe Kennedy recently discovered, pulling the guys together for this purpose at the Bremerton School District in Washington State can come at a great risk. The risk of losing your job. And that is precisely what happened to Mr. Kennedy, who has been engaging in a prayer huddle with his teams since 2008. Although somehow this practice only recently became known to the school district. Apparently, the brass running Bremerton schools aren't much for attending their school football games. Nevertheless, Kennedy was ordered to stop the prayers when the district suggested the coach may be violating the federal and state constitutional rights of the students or others. When he failed to do so, the coach was placed on paid leave. Now, keeping in mind that the coach did not require anyone on the football squad to pray along with him, did the school district act properly in punishing the coach, Gail?
Clearly not, and it's absurd. I've been following this issue my entire legal career, and anti-Christians would like you to think that there's only one part of the First Amendment, the Establishment Clause, that prevents the government from establishing a national religion. But there's also a Free Exercise Clause.
That's right.
And this is a perfect example of where someone in his job is able to exercise his religion. It doesn't inconvenience anyone. It doesn't compel anyone to follow his religion. It doesn't have the imprimatur of the government on religion. And yet we cannot, as a society, have religious accommodation for someone. What if a Muslim woman wanted to wear a headscarf to teach a class? That is a religious observation. I would have no problem with that. I think that's fine. And we are a diverse, multicultural society.
How much does this happening on public lands come into play? I mean, there's a case going on, I think it's in Seattle, where Muslims wanted to go into a quiet room in the airport there, a public space, and pray. Because they, a lot of them are taxi drivers and they can't get to their mosque in time, and that has created a legal case. Is that any different than this?
It is very different. It is very different, but I would support that too. I don't think there's any reason why we can't let Americans exercise their religion. That's a fundamental right that we have.
Obviously, you have the right to express your religion, and I'm not an attorney, but I'm also aware of the fact that if you looked at that video footage, he was a leader in a leadership position in a very public place, And I think it was a bit more than expressing something quietly in a corner in a private room where everyone has the opportunity.
Who says he has to do it quietly?
Well, he's an employee of the school district.
He doesn't give up his First Amendment rights because he's an employee of the school district. That's not what we fought and died for. No, it's not. We can't control that to Sunday mornings.
Okay.
We as religious people can go through our entire life.
So if you're a teacher,
and be able to
let's do another scenario. So if you're a teacher in a classroom, and you're paid for by the state, and you suddenly break in the middle of social studies class and you say,
different situation. Actually, I'm going to get into the law a little bit on this, and this is the issue, and it makes it even more focused. We know the Supreme Court has already prohibited school prayer. That happened in a 1962 case. The court later ruled that in a case where a chaplain was broadcasting a prayer over the public address system before a football game, that was not okay because it required everyone at the game to hear it, and that therefore made it a violation of the First Amendment. But in this case, the coach was not forcing anyone to participate. The coach was simply getting down on his knee at the right after he had shaken hands with the opposing counsel.
That's not what he did. Did you see the video? There were 35 people around him.
Wait. That was before they stopped him from doing it.
Right.
Okay.
And he continued to do it.
But wait, he continued to do it, but not that. He was doing it by himself in the middle of the field. So if he's not forcing the kids to participate, and if he's literally doing this by himself, why is that not okay?
He has the right to take that suit to court, and this is something that has been brought to court.
No, but people shouldn't have to take these things to court. That is the whole problem.
Well,
so
if
this
the law is
gentleman
on
was
his
not
side,
fired.
then it
The
should
coach
protect
was
him.
not
He wasn't
fired,
fired.
but
He's
he
on
was
paid
told he
leave.
couldn't go. But that's a real problem because it makes litigation more difficult because it's harder to show damage. So the school district wants to have it both ways. They want to prohibit his exercise of his religious freedom,
there's also another
but they don't want to have a lawsuit.
There's also another
That's why
component to this.
people
There
have
was a
to make
group
sure
of-
that they continue to assert their
we-
fundamental.
Let me
There's
get
another
Joe.
component to
Let me
this.
get you.
I actually had a question for
Go
Gail,
ahead.
because I want this clarified. He's not fired.
Right.
But he's relieved of his duties.
Yes.
Yes. Right.
Which means that
Which
he's
is
still
worse.
on the staff of the school.
Actually,
Yes.
probably just till the end of the year.
Just
Till
till the
his
end of the year.
contract ends.
Yeah.
However, since he's still working and receiving a paycheck, that prohibits him from, if he wanted to, open a suit. He can't because he technically wasn't
yes, he
fired.
can.
He can still do it.
It wouldn't
He can and
prohibit
he
the
is.
suit. It just makes it more difficult because they would say, well, you don't have damages because you are still receiving your paycheck, so you don't have any monetary damages. So it's the worst of both worlds. They don't even have the courage of their convictions.
And your
the school
question
district.
is relevant because not everybody agrees that this was correct. In fact, what are they called? I forget the name of the organization, but they are filing a lawsuit.
Liberty
on
Institute.
Liberty Institute on his behalf.
As a former high school player,
So-
state champs, we prayed before every game in a classroom with the minister.
All right. Well, we want to know what you think about this tough question. Should Coach Kennedy have been placed on a paid leave for wanting to pray on the field before and after the game? Let us know. NewsmaxTV.com/comments is the place to go. And when we return, your comments on the air.
All right, we're thirsty for your comments. And guess what people want to talk about there, Ricky? They
What?
want to talk about last night's debate.
Go figure.
Okay, and Rick says, not you, but the commenter says, last night's debate was a total joke. John Harwood lost any respect I had for him. He was more interested in trying to make the candidates look bad instead of finding out what they really stood for.
No disagreement. Carol says, if I was in control of the Republican Party, I would be very careful on who I was going to have moderate the next debate. Last night, a total farce.
Well, that's very true. And Reince Priebus deserves some responsibility.
Well, you know what? Let's talk about that. How much does he really have to say about that? Far be it from me to defend Reince Priebus. A, I'm not a big fan, and B, my partner is Michael Steele, so you can imagine how I feel about Reince Priebus. But I don't think that he can pre-approve the questions that are going to be
Not the
asked.
questions, but the moderators that are
Well,
asking
you know
them.
what? I'm sure that when he looked at those moderators, said these are three of the best people they have at CNBC.
David Faber's pretty darn good.
It becomes
and Kieran
opinion.
is pretty good.
It becomes opinion.
I know.
And who's to say they wouldn't have been just as bad in the questioning? So I am going to defend him a little bit on this. I think that's asking a little too much of him. Now, he might have decided that CNBC was not the best place for a debate. That's something he would have some control over. but I suspect he thought it's a business network. It'll be a business discussion. It wasn't any of that.
It was not indeed. Okay, Steve writes, I don't think the moderators during last night's debate did a bad job. They did point out some serious issues, including Ben Carson claiming he wasn't aware of endorsing a herbal supplement like Rick did a couple of years ago. Ben flat out lied about that. You know, we didn't get to talk about that before. Gail, or let me go to the other Democrat on the panel.
Fact checking is easy.
It is, right?
It's not hard.
So in this
He's been caught
case,
in these positions a few times, and so is Carly Fiorina, and I think that's her issue right now. Even though she spoke more than anybody else in that debate stage, she is not moving up in the polls because she's been fact checked so many times as being completely false, including last night.
The numbers, the numbers do prove that actually Carly Fiorina spoke more than anybody at that debate last night. You wouldn't think that because we're barely talking about her. She had a fine performance. There's just something about her this time that isn't impactful.
And Ben Carson was very lucky last night that he got the crowd on his side. I don't think he told the truth when he answered that question because, you know, we're both attorneys. We know that it rarely happens where somebody's going to use your name and likeness without A, notifying you, and B, paying you.
I had a different reaction to that.
Oh, really?
Because I've had my image put all over the website, or all over the internet with messages that I don't endorse. So I don't think you could. No, because it's too much.
Maxim's very hard to sue.
They make money off of it?
Yeah. But I think your article was so great in talking about Miss Quick, and that she is never going to have the ability to moderate one of these debates again. So I think there are professional consequences for these moderators that the viewers have seen because they were able to kind of pull back the curtain on them and see that they lacked the journalistic professionalism that they needed to ask those really tough economic
I will
questions.
add, giving you the benefit of the doubt that he somehow didn't know they were using his picture. I can show you a promotional film he did for them that was online. He had to know it because he participated in making it.
Was it on his website?
No, it was on theirs, and it had the logo of the company. So I didn't really buy
Lightning
it.
round
Anyhow,
question.
John says, if the RNC has a pair, what do you mean, John? They would cancel all of the future NBC debates. Maybe they should be on Newsmax where they will get real questions. Right you are, John.
Wow, we could moderate a debate, you and me. Wouldn't that be
I'd
interesting?
be accused of bias before I began.
No, I think you'd be fair, believe it or not.
A Democratic debate.
You'd be fair. I'll give you that. Sammy writes, Donald Trump once again proved why he will win this election. He speaks his mind without regard to others' feelings. It's time for America to have a president that will not be controlled by lobbyists. Quickly, do you think that Trump was hurt last night or helped? I think he is.
It was a wash.
Right. How about Ben Carson? Will he be hurt?
Wash.
Wash.
I think he'll be hurt a little bit, maybe 2 or 3 points.
And who gains?
Ted Cruz.
Cruz and Rubio.
Cruz swept.
I think the polls are going to stay relatively static. But I can't believe that commenter thought that what makes you a good president is not being afraid to be rude to people. Interesting.
Well, I think
my
it's more
parents
like,
would have disagreed with you.
Okay. I think, honestly, that Rubio, I've called him winning other debates before, and he gets no bounce. It's so frustrating. Fiorina I called winning, and she got a bounce, and then she was like elastic, came right back.
She repeated herself a little too much.
She did, that's true.
I thought
anyway,
that was a failure.
We got to go, because if you want to weigh in on any of the issues we talk about here in the show, be sure to go to comments at newsmaxtv.com/comments, right there below you. As you can see, we read them on the air. Up next, it's time for Yay or Nay, but first, Newsmax has this special offer. That's right, it's the shocking new book, Unlikable, The Problem with Hillary by Edward Klein. It's already skyrocketed to the top of the bestseller list. It's probably the most powerful expose on Hillary ever written. In Unlikable, author Ed Klein, Nomi, offers a stunning, powerful expose of Hillary Clinton and her race to the White House with unprecedented access scale. Klein meticulously recreates conversations and details of Hillary Clinton's behind-the-scenes strategy. Klein also reveals the angry rivalry between Hillary and Barack Obama. Unlikable retails for $29.95, but now you can get it with our free offer. Get this almost $30 value absolutely free. Just go online to newsmax.com/Klein or call toll-free 1-800-850-8749. 2016 is fast approaching. You need to read Unlikable. Get the truth about Hillary. Check out our incredible offer right now. It's happy time, people. Time for the best 6 minutes in cable news. Time for Yay or Nay. Why am I doing the Jon Stewart voice? First up, it's
I've
national.
forgotten what that voice is. He's been
where he
gone
kind of
so
sings
long.
and does the like that.
Like
yeah.
this.
It is easier to read that way. That's true. But did you know you can? Oh, let's rewind that, shall we? Okay, it's National Cat Day. You already knew that, of course. But did you know you can order a furry feline via Uber? That's right. We ain't spinning a ball of yarn here. It's the new cat-tastic way to adopt one of the many kitties in need of a home. Here's how it works. Today only. Uber users can pay $30 to have a visit from an actual kitten for up to 15 minutes of quality snuggle time. It's all part of an effort to get cats out of shelters and into homes. Now, listen to me on this. I'm serious. There are about 7.6 million animals that enter shelters each year, including 3.9 million dogs, 3.4 million cats. Of those cats, 37% are adopted, 41% are euthanized. And less than 5% of cats came in as strays are returned to their owner. So please go ahead and adopt if you're on the fence on this one. You and your new housemate, roommate will be glad you did. Yay or nay question, have you ever adopted anything before?
Oh, good heavens, yes. And my cat Frankie's at home watching right now, so I got to say the right thing.
Oh, there you go, Frankie. I like that. Yeah. That's a cat name. Yeah.
I adopted 2 dogs in law school and called them Romulus and Remus. Oh my God.
What do the names mean? I'm dumb.
The founders of Rome.
That's right.
Oh, really?
Founders of
Yes.
Rome.
Wow, Rome. That's funny.
really
I didn't know that. Go ahead.
As the token liberal vegetarian, obviously. Oh my gosh, yes, my little Bijou. My baby Bijou.
And it was adopted.
And he's adopted. And
Good
then we
for
adopted
you.
a bunch of them, and my roommate went through several cycles of adoptions with many dogs.
Wow.
But Bijou stuck it out. He was there the whole time.
Such a scumbag. Because I went to a breeder I didn't adopt because I wanted to avoid illnesses and problems with the dog. But the next one will be adopted. I can guarantee you that. Okay, next up, Chinese state media. Here we call it CNBC, reporting that the government will now relax its long-standing one-child policy, allowing couples to have 2 kids, like me. Let's take a look at my kids, shall we? There's Cameron first. Do we have a picture? Yeah, there she is. That's her at her 2-year-old birthday party. Doesn't she look precious? Little new little blue top that she just got. And then we have Liam, who is now 8 weeks old. Can you believe how fast the time is going? Just got his shots yesterday, and he's like a pro. I mean, he handled it. He barely cried.
Did you actually pick the China story just so you could show pictures of your kids on TV? Did you actually do that?
Yeah.
Oh, you should be so ashamed.
Okay.
Wait, can I put my grandkids up on here? Is there time?
We'll get to them tomorrow.
Okay,
back to the story. So Chinese state media explains that the reason for the switch is because of China's impending demographic time bomb. Good Lord. People are actually getting old now in China, and the government knows it. So, with the decreasing amount of young people to support the elderly, the Chinese government's saying, okay, you're now allowed to have 2. So, with millions of immigrants flooding this country, here's your yay or nay questions, and resources becoming more scarce. Should the U.S. consider capping the Duggars' number of children at 19?
Well, in the case of the Duggars, yes. I don't think we need any more of those. As for the Chinese, it's too late. They waited too long, and they should never have done it in the first place, and now they're going to have a very big problem.
They will, won't they?
Yes.
Their Obamacare version won't work where the young can support the old.
So don't cap the Duggars, but definitely this is a great step for China, because I read an article online that a Chinese man was suggesting that Chinese men start sharing wives.
Really?
The men outnumber the women by.
Well, there's something to be said.
Oh, I didn't know that.
No,
3 to 1.
no,
Financially speaking.
No.
Wow.
Yeah, there was a Vice story about this. It was fascinating.
You
They
saw
had a
that.
guy,
We got to make this a block, but quickly.
Overpopulation. We should all be capped at like 0.
Like you're at 0 right now. No kids for Nomi. Okay. And finally tonight, it's been announced that MSNBC's Rachel Maddow will moderate the second debate for the Democratic Party at Winthrop University in Rock Hill, South Carolina in November. There's Rachel. The event will air live, of course, on MSNBC. Ms. Maddow will be there and speak to the remaining 3 candidates. That's, of course, Hillary and Bernie Sanders and Martin O'Malley. Here's your yay or nay question. With Rachel, who's obviously biased, should the Republicans allow a Hannity or a Rush or a Levin to moderate a debate at some point quickly?
I'd be okay with that.
Okay. Gail?
Sure, why not?
Boom.
Fox News didn't do that. They didn't invite Rachel Maddow in.
All right, very good point. And that's our show for tonight. On behalf of Rick Unger and Nomi and Gail and our floor director, Raider O'Reilly, we thank you for joining us tonight. The Steve Ballsberg Show. That's next.